Did you hear that? It sounded like something coming wrong.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Marisa Sanchez, and I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm speaking to you today from New York City, and I'll be chairing tonight's event. We're going to begin our program in just a moment, but before we do, I'd like to ask everyone watching right now to click the share button to let your friends know about this extremely important live stream. So we'll have you do that now. Thank you very much. So tonight's PSL livestream was originally scheduled to be a feature of our 2020 presidential La Riva Freeman campaign, and we will hold that live stream in the near future. But what we're going to be doing tonight is coming to you with a pressing message about an unfolding legal crackdown against the anti-racist movement that has been sweeping the country since the murder of George Floyd. Today, on September 17th in Denver, Colorado, law enforcement units arrested several lead organizers of the mass anti-racist protest movement that has been on the streets demanding justice for Elijah McClain and other victims of police brutality. This morning, Russell Roach was arrested while in a parking lot at a Home Depot, and an hour later, 5 police cars surrounded and arrested Lillian House while she was driving. And then this afternoon, SWAT teams arrived at Joel Northam's home and arrested him. As we are writing, we have also learned that Eliza Lucero has also been arrested. All 4 are members of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and there may have been others who have been arrested as well. They are facing serious felony charges and many misdemeanors, including the bizarre and ludicrous charge of kidnapping, all because they have organized large Black Lives Matter protests. This is a major political attack on the whole movement and the PSL, and we will mount a mass campaign to defeat these phony charges and win their freedom. The movement for justice in the Denver area has been in the streets constantly since the brutal murder of George Floyd and the release of the footage of the Aurora PD's murder of 23-year-old Elijah McClain. These organizers have worked closely with other activists and family members of local police brutality victims to amplify their cases. They have committed no crimes, but only devoted themselves to the struggle for justice, and that is why they've been targeted and rounded up. This attack on the Denver anti-racist movement and the PSL is a part of a concentrated national assault on the Black Lives Matter movement, an attack driven directly from the White House, from governors' mansions, and from local police chiefs and police departments around the country. And what we want to tell everyone tonight in Denver and around the country is that the people are coming together to build a movement to defend these organizers. We are building a mass movement to end this assault and these arrests, and to let people know that we're not going to take this laying down. That's why this Saturday at 12 noon at the State Capitol building on the West Steps in Denver, we will hold a demonstration to demand their release, a dropping of all charges against them, and that the police who killed Elijah McClain be tried and convicted. So tonight we will hear about this unfolding situation and its implications for the movement from Mara Verheyden Hilliard, an attorney and executive director with the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund, and PSL leaders Gloria La Riva, Eugene Puryear, and Brian Becker. First, we're going to hear from Eugene. So welcome, Eugene. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you, Marissa. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you to everyone who has joined us here this evening. I'm sorry we have to gather under these circumstances, but it is not that surprising given what we have seen in terms of the reality of this country, where the police murderers of innocent victims go completely unpunished, but where those who stand up for justice, stand up for the rights of the people, are continually criminalized. And that is exactly what we are seeing here today with this action by these various Denver area police agencies. I mean, when you even look at the nature of the charges and what they are related to, it says everything that needs to be said. These charges stem, at least according to the Denver Post, and I just, forgive me for looking down, but I want to get this right because we aren't the Aurora PD here, so we're committed to the truth. On June 27th, July 3rd, July 12th, and July 25th, Now, June 27th may be notable to many of you who are out here watching. That was a demonstration where the repression by the police went viral. That was the one where the Aurora PD brutally broke up a violin vigil. They just randomly declared it an illegal gathering and came in with stormtrooper riot cops and attacked the protest. And again, a peaceful rally of people playing the violin in honor of Elijah McClain, who had taught himself how to play the violin, who of course was brutally murdered by the Aurora PD. July 3rd. July 3rd, also another notable demonstration, because that was a demonstration called because of photos that were revealed of 3 Aurora PD officers who were mocking Elijah McClain, who had been choked to death by the police officers, their fellow police officers, who have told a huge range of lies about what took place that evening. These 3 officers took a photo mocking, smiling, laughing the idea of Elijah McClain being put in a brutal chokehold during the arrest that ultimately led to his death. Then there was July 12th, which was a large car caravan where people from all around the Denver area in the middle of the day, over 200 cars, came out in order to protest for justice for Elijah McClain and all victims of police terror. And then finally, July 25th, where there was another one that went viral for many people around the country, where a peaceful protest, again, a spirited protest for sure, but a peaceful one nonetheless, was also attacked by a car that sped into demonstrators. So we can see exactly what's taking place here. This isn't some, as they're trying to claim, some issue about violence or disruption or whatever they're going to claim about those who have been arrested. This is payback. This is payback from the authorities in the Aurora and Denver area, because they are irate that their crimes have been revealed to the world, and that they've been revealed very clearly, and that thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the Denver area have stood up and said, no more, this is enough. We want justice for Elijah McClain. We want justice for everyone who's been murdered by police in our area, and justice for every victim of police terror. And I just want to say quickly that this is so disgusting on so many different levels, but as I referenced earlier, even more so because the 3 police officers who murdered Elijah McClain, as we sit here talking about activists who are standing up for justice, being jailed, having massive charges dropped on top of them, criminalizing protests, these 3 officers who murdered Elijah McClain still going free, walking the streets free, even though they held him on the ground for 15 minutes. They put him in a brutal chokehold. They lied to the EMTs that he was given a massive shot of ketamine. I mean, it's one of the most tragic stories. I mean, they're all so tragic, but it's so incredibly tragic. He also said, I can't breathe. He even apologized to the police officers after he vomited because they weren't allowing him to breathe correctly. He was doing everything possible, saying that he would do anything to get out of that. This is a person who had done absolutely nothing. The police made a ludicrous claim that he grabbed for a gun. And they said, well, there's no video of it because our body cams fell off. But then when you listen to the audio from the body cam, one of the people is saying they can't even remember him grabbing him for a gun. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know that these cops are brutal murderers. And we know that they did this on purpose. And we knew that they lied when the EMTs show up, which even further made the situation even worse. And then we know that exactly, that the authorities that are allegedly supposed to be holding people accountable said these 3 officers committed no crime. They choked him out. They killed him. They murdered him. No crime. But you lead a mass protest movement to expose these brutal murders, and you're criminalized. There's been hundreds of people, thousands of people across this country who have been arrested during this uprising. And we see cops going free constantly all over the country, certainly here in the Denver area. That's what the United States is really about. It's about the impunity of police officers to kill people and to shoot people down. And President Trump was on TV today at some fake history conference, claiming that this is not a country of racism, claiming that people have been poisoned because they've been taught about racism. Well, look at the murder of Elijah McClain. This country is racist to its core. And people say it's a few bad apples. Well, a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. And these racist murderers are now trying to strike back at the thousands of the people in the Denver area who have stood up against their crimes. And they're going to do everything possible to try to scare all of us. And it's not even just about the Denver area. They want us all to be scared. That's what these heavy charges are about for protesters all around the country, is the police and their supporters who are just terrified that their reign of terror over communities of color and poor communities all across this country could be coming to an end, because millions of people are rising up and saying no more about this, are doing everything possible to scare us off the streets, to scare us away from organizing, to make us fear joining organizations that are fighting back, and to not reinstitute, but to keep going with this vicious brutal reign of police terrorism. So I hope that everyone who is in the Denver area, who is watching this, will be able to make it to the state capitol at noon on Saturday on the West Steps in Denver to protest these outrageous arrests, these outrageous charges, and to demand justice for Elijah McClain and all victims of police terror. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. All right, so next we're going to be hearing from Mara. Mara is the Executive Director and Attorney with the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund. Thank you, Mara, so much for joining us tonight. All right, sorry about that. We're having a little bit of audio difficulty, so we're gonna just take a moment, but then I think we'll go ahead and jump over to Gloria, who I believe is ready to go. Just give us a second. Thanks for your patience. All right. Do you want to switch back to me and I'll say, all right, Gloria, we're on to you. Here, switch back to me.
Yes.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and go to Gloria.
Hello, sisters and brothers, comrades and friends. Hello. Sisters and brothers, comrades and friends, there are many police departments across the U.S. that have notorious records of egregious attacks of vicious police terror on the Black community. The Aurora Police Department is an exceptionally brutal, thuggish mob force. It's important to realize that Elijah McClain was murdered over a year ago in August of 2019. And the 3 police who were involved in his murder, who choked 23-year-old Elijah to death, who laughed while he vomited, and then threatened to sick a dog on him as he lay dying, thought they had gotten away with his murder. The police worked overtime to cover up the crime, and city officials also took their word. But now they're the target of a major movement that is demanding their arrest and prosecution for murder. Their cover-up and their mockery of Elijah's death is now exposed because of this year's sustained protests, the most that anyone has ever seen in Aurora, and rare for Denver. It's a real movement demanding accountability and justice for Elijah McClain that could ever be imagined. Lillian House, Russell Roush, Joel Northrum, and Eliza Lucero are leaders in that movement. They've led many of the most effective sustained protests, creative actions, a march between Denver and Aurora, calling out the police, naming names of those responsible for choking Elijah to death, and those involved in the cover-up. If the cops are now under investigation that only began in late June of this year, that the state was forced to undertake, as they admit in so many words, because of facts that have come out, facts like the video, facts like the exposition of what the police did, and because the police could face prosecution and jail. It's easy to see why the police directly involved and the police department would try to save themselves, try to save those cops from jail by heaping charges on those highly visible leaders in the movement. That's a common practice in the police department. You get arrested in a protest and they throw charges on you to try to get you to back down from demanding justice. Remember this, it is only this summer that a special investigator was named to investigate Elijah's death at the hand of the police. It would never have happened if it weren't for the protests of the past months. Our comrades in PSL Denver and Aurora are well known in the community for having led those protests. Imagine what it took for the police to have circled Lillian as she was driving down a street by 5 cop cars before they arrested her. Imagine what it was for Russell to be at a Home Depot shopping and for the police to have been following him all this time. And imagine what it was for a SWAT team of these deadly cops to have gone to the Comrade Joel's house. What a terrifying moment that must have been for him. It's intended to intimidate not only our members who were arrested and Elijah as well, but the movement, the national movement, which has risen up in the most sustained struggle ever seen in this country of the United States. Thousands of demonstrations since the vile murder of George Floyd. And every time now that a cop kills somebody, or it's been exposed, a months-long murder like that of Breonna Taylor, the people are rising up everywhere to say, and we want justice for them too. Now, if a small but determined handful of protesters, organizers, could do what they've done to force the hand of the state, think of what a defense movement to demand the dropping of all the charges, what it will do. And that will be up to us, sisters and brothers. I've marched in a number of anti-police brutality protests in recent months and weeks and days. In Portland, Oregon, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Rochester, New York, Nashville, Tennessee, Burlington, Vermont. And we're seeing the fury of the police on the peaceful protests with rubber bullets, steel balls, tear gas, pepper spray. And now we're seeing these charges being heaped on protesters. People being rounded up by unidentified police right off the street, not knowing who's grabbing them and taking them into a van. We're seeing that in many, many cities, but the people have not stopped demonstrating. And the people of Aurora, Denver, and outlying areas who are going to come Saturday to Denver are not going to stop either. In fact, it's going to grow. And we will see those police indicted and face justice for what they did to that young man, Elijah. And to so many others, we will keep on fighting, along with the tens, hundreds of thousands. This movement is going to grow.
All right, thank you, Gloria. So now we will go ahead and hear from Mara. Mara, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
I'm glad to be with you, and I believe my audio is working now. The situation that we're watching at the moment is as stark as it could possibly be. We have, on the one hand, the people who murdered Elijah McClain, murdered Breonna Taylor, murdered Daniel Prude, murdered so many, walking free. And the people that are being arrested and prosecuted by those prosecutors' offices that are doing nothing about police who murder. The people that are being arrested and jailed and threatened with massive penalties and jail time, prison time, are those that are willing to stand up and fight for racial justice. And make no mistake, this is completely an attack on a powerful movement that is sweeping the streets, a movement that is drawing millions of people into political life, many of whom were never engaged in these kind of actions before. This is an attack on peaceful protesters. This is an attack on people for one single reason, and it is because as a unit, as a group, as an assembly of people coming together and making common cause, they are demanding justice, and they're demanding justice of the police department. They're demanding justice that would affect these police officers, that would affect these police departments, that would affect these prosecutors' offices. And so what do they want to do? They want to arrest them because they are trying to send a message. They're trying to send a message to everyone that they need to step back. And this must have the opposite effect. This is exactly like what was happening when Donald Trump and the military and the park police decided to attack the demonstrators and the journalists who were in and around Lafayette Park on June 1st. This was a massive attack on people without cause, without basis, and it was done in order to terrify people, to scare people, and to send a message that if you engage in social justice activism, you are risking life and limb to come out. And they certainly believed that this would chill and crush the movement, and it had the opposite effect. more people came out the next day, and more the day after, and more people joining from all walks of life. Because when people see this kind of extreme, outrageous, grotesque, and visceral types of oppression, people who care and demand justice are going to stand up and fight back, and that's what's happening now. Today, I can tell you what I heard. And I heard a terrifying scene of someone on the phone with the police trying to smash the door in, with a SWAT team, with a military tank or truck outside, with a police unit threatening to break down the door and refusing to show an arrest warrant, refusing to slide an arrest warrant under the door, refusing to hold an arrest warrant up. A person who is being threatened with arrest is entitled to see that warrant. They were refusing to do it. This was obviously an intentional operation intended to sow fear, intended to be terrifying, intended to send a message. We all need to take that message and send it back. And our message back must be that we will not be afraid, that we will stand up, we will fight and stand alongside and join in the racial justice movement, that those who have been in this movement in the streets for months and for years are not going back inside, and that for others who have never come out, this is the time to come out. Because across the country, people are being arrested who are engaged in peaceful protest, and protesters are being demonized. That is always part and parcel of these kinds of attacks. There is an extreme effort to demonize demonstrators, to claim people are rioters, to suggest that people somehow deserve what's coming to them. We know it's not true. We're seeing exactly what's happening on the ground. And the only way to fight back is for more and more people to demand justice. The government is hoping that this type of attack not only will impact and affect those who are being threatened with jail time, those who are wrongfully arrested, and those who are going to be fighting to free, but that it will impact everyone else. This is part of the entire initiative that we've seen from the federal government, with the deployment of federal troops, with paramilitary units into Portland, with the threatened deployment of paramilitary units elsewhere across the country. And it is only because this movement is so incredibly powerful. It is shaking the foundations of institutional racism. It is shaking the foundations of the police and the police apparatus and the police structure that causes so much damage and that has gone unchallenged for so long, at least unchallenged by this number of people in the United States who are forcing and demanding change. So the number one thing that we can't do is be afraid. We can't go back inside. And we have to stand and fight and help anyone that gets targeted, wrongfully targeted by these prosecutors and these police who are doing everything they can to shut down the movement. That's what we're committed to doing, is to stand in defense of the racial justice movement. It won't back down, and all of us who are standing together, we won't back down.
Thank you, Mara. All right, so before we go to our final speaker, I just want to ask everyone to please visit pslweb.org/donate4Denver. This is where you can make an urgently needed donation that will help, among other things, to pay for the legal fees that will be coming up as we're dealing with these arrests. And with that, I do want to introduce our final speaker, Brian Becker. Brian, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Marisa, and thank you to all of the other folks who have joined us on this very important live stream. As everyone knows, we had scheduled to have the campaign for Gloria La Riva, a socialist campaign for the 2020 election campaign, be featured tonight. We got word this morning that one of our comrades, Russell, had been arrested in a Home Depot parking lot, as the others mentioned. I talked to Russell. He was able to talk for a little bit. And then word came that Lillian had been stopped by the police. She said, "I'm being pulled over." She was able to reach one of the comrades. We didn't know where she was. So others went out to look for her and finally found her car. And we talked to a neighbor, and the neighbor said that there were 5 police cars that had come to make this arrest. We didn't hear from Lillian for several hours. Finally, she was able to talk to somebody in the Denver branch, and she told that person that she had been given many, many felonies and misdemeanors. The felonies included, she believed, kidnap charges, perhaps more than one kidnap charge, riot charges. I spoke to Joel, who was at his apartment. The police arrived, the SWAT team. He said there's an MRAP tank outside. We don't know what kind of equipment they had. But as I was talking to him, you could hear the pounding, them demanding that he come outside, that he was going to be arrested. And he said, "I want to see an arrest warrant." They wouldn't show it to him. And then we got word that another comrade was arrested. And we're getting news that perhaps others in the movement against racism and demanding justice for Elijah McClain have also been arrested. They could have arrested these people any which way, but the way they arrested them was clearly designed to send a message. They were sending a message that you better not mess with the Denver police. You better not challenge our racism. You better not challenge our license to be judge, jury, and executioner against whomever we want. How dare you organize Black and brown and indigenous and white and Asian American and Native people to stand together to demand justice? How dare you, these organizers, bring together a mass movement that could sustain itself day after day, week after week? That's what's happened in Denver. The police did all of this, choreographed this, calibrated this, designed to create maximum fear. And our comrades are still in jail today. And they may be in jail for some time. We don't know. These are very, very serious charges. It's very important under these circumstances to realize the significance not simply of having a movement, but having an organization. Because the PSL, as a national organization dedicated to the struggle of working class and poor communities, the struggle against racism and against misogyny, against the bigotry directed against the LGBTQ community, dedicated to the fight against war and for peace, an organization that can deal with many, many issues and has trained organizers. We are not about to lie down, take this, become passive, retreat, become intimidated, and say, in the face of police terror and police repression and police intimidation, we're not going to keep organizing. We're not going to do that. In fact, we're going in the opposite direction. We're going to accelerate this movement. It's going to grow. Resistance meets repression. And frequently the oppressors believe the repression will drive the oppressed back into the closet, back into retreat, back into the shadows. But repression can have the opposite effect. It can be a catalyst for more resistance, for more protest. Look at every process around the world, everywhere. Whenever real movements for social change come into existence, the powers that be use the police, they use the powers of the state, they use coercion and violence and intimidation to destroy the movement. And every movement that actually succeeds, that proves its validity and its viability, has to deal with the repression, has to overcome the repression, and has to use the repression as a catalyst for an even greater struggle. And our comrades in Denver have that perspective, and we support them. That's what it means to have an organization. You're not alone. You're not by yourself. You're not able to be atomized and picked off by the police. On Saturday at noon, The comrades in Denver and others in the movement in Denver are coming together for a mass protest, demanding justice for Elijah McClain, demanding that those killer cops be held accountable for their murder, and now demanding the freedom for these people who have been arrested and demanding that those charges be dropped. I was just on the phone with comrades in other cities in the Southwest. They're going to come to Denver on Saturday. Even if it's a long drive, they're going to come. And we have people from around the country who are coming to Denver. In fact, we have to shine a bright light on the Denver and Aurora police and make it clear that when they use repression to destroy a movement for social justice, that we, the movement of the people around the world, won't let them succeed. We need a movement, but we need organization. That's what we're doing. That's what the PSL exists for. To build an organization so that whether the movement is up or down, whether it's ebbing or flowing, whether it's going through a tidal wave of support or whether it has to retreat under some circumstances, the movement retains and sustains its viability. That's what organization means. And it means you have the collective. It means you are not alone. It means you have comrades. It means that when the movement is under attack, the entire movement comes to those who are the focus of that attack. We're going to overcome this, comrades. We're going to push back this police attack. Our comrades are strong. They wouldn't have been able to do what they did in the recent months in building the mass movement in Denver if they weren't already strong people. This is a trying time for them. It's a trying time for their families, but they are strong people. And we have strong comrades and strong support from the community, and we can build that movement, we can organize the support, and we can overcome. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Go to that to the link that Marissa mentioned. Maybe she can post it once again. We're going to, of course, there's going to be legal support. There's going to be political mobilization support. This is important that we have the resources to do what we must do in order to win their freedom. The government put all these heavy charges, felony after felony after felony, so that they could be looking at decades in prison with the idea that ultimately, people would be compelled to perhaps either plead guilty to a lesser charge or be imprisoned on a lesser charge. This is called charge stacking. It's designed to crush the spirit of the individual. We can't let that happen. By changing the political climate right now, by going back into the streets, by showing that we're not afraid and that in fact this repression will lead to greater resistance, we can change the political climate such that these people will have their charges dropped, that they will be freed, that they will go back to their families and their communities and their workplaces where they are already doing organizing. And more importantly than all, that the family of Elijah McClain will get justice and that these killer cops who killed Elijah and, as Eugene said, made jokes about their killing, that these people will see accountability. We can do this if we do it together, comrades, and we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. And I want to thank each of our speakers for joining our program today. Before we end the live stream event, I do want to point again to the donation page for this unfolding legal campaign to free all of those who have been arrested. So please go to pslweb.org/donate4Denver to make an urgently needed donation today. This attack on the PSL and the Denver movement is part of a concerted assault on the Black Lives Matter movement, an attack, as I said in the beginning, that is being driven directly from the White House, from governors' mansions, and from local police chiefs and police departments around the country. The military has admitted to attempting to use sound cannons and heat rays to disperse crowds on June 1st in Washington, D.C. Federal police broke the law by firing tear gas and smoke canisters with no warning. This type of repression is now being used in practically every city in the country to put down one of the largest protest movements in U.S. history. The Denver organizers could be any of us, and we all must stand together. We know that every social movement in the past has faced such repression, and we will stand up to face it again. We will fight, and we will win. Thank you, and have a good night. Stay safe.